Okay, council members, we're ready whenever you are.
Thank you. I'll just wait a second. We'll get to 5 o'clock.
Perfect.
It now being 5 o'clock, I will call the regular council meeting for Tuesday, June the 7th, 2022 to order and begin with our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Ashbek. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. And I'd ask that we please observe a moment of silence so that council, staff, and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you, colleagues. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. The agenda has been circulated. Is there any declaration of community interest and general nature thereof? Madam Clerk, none has been noted. We'll move to the minutes then. We have two sets of minutes. We have our special council meeting of May the 17th, 2022, and the regular council meeting minutes of May the 24th. Sherry, move. Seconded by Anita. All in favor? Carried. Any discussion of the minutes? Not seeing or hearing any. We'll move on to deputations. There are no registered deputations this evening. And so we'll then move on to question period. Madam Clerk, are there any questions?
No questions.
Thank you very much. That being said, we'll move on to our municipal officers and staff reports for direction. And the first report is from Lane, and another installment on our asset management plan. Lane, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just pulling up a presentation here, just to kind of guide our discussions as we go through this evening. I'm pleased to, I assume you can see that on your screen? Great. So I'm pleased to provide this update on the asset management plan process and our next steps, really where we are now and onward to June 28th council meeting. In tonight's report, we've some draft sections to review with council. And as noted, these sections are still very much draft. We'll be updating data pretty much right up to the end of June. So nothing's written in stone. I think I said that at the last meeting, but it's an opportunity to inquire and ask questions and just allow council to see how the plan is progressing. So a little bit about data management, where we are currently. I just want to touch base on this. With respect to the first 4 bullets here, a lot of information on water and sewer. These classes of assets are very data heavy. Adam's been working through that, our project coordinator for water and sewer, and he's making good headway there. But definitely a number of detailed reviews underway on our distribution and collection system, and collecting data on our water treatment and sewer treatment plant. I will say the water treatment plant data collection is going to be a challenge for us, but we are proceeding through that one. Sewer treatment not as bad given the lagoon system that we have in place, but a lot of work going on there and will be for the rest of this month. The stormwater management, we have our condition ratings in. We have received a resiliency report and costing, which are 2 key requirements of the schedules under the asset management plan. And I would say at this point that section is about 95% completed and will be completed by the end of this week. Our draft roads needs study is underway. It was behind our scheduled receipt dates of some key pieces of information. But that has been received actually late yesterday now. So we have a draft version. So I'll be able to go through that and update the 2017 data, which is currently in the road section that council has before them tonight. So that will be updated for the 2022 roads needs study. And with respect to bridges and structures, that section is being laid out right now. Data has not yet been received there, but we do expect that inspections will be done later in June, hopefully by the end of next week, I think is what Rick heard as of today. So definitely getting down to the crunch time, but making progress every day. So a little bit about the road section, which is attached to the report the council has before them tonight. I hope that this gives council a good idea of the type of information that we will include in each core asset section. Now we have been completing draft roads needs studies since 2002. So this section could be a bit heavier with information just because it's readily available and we're very familiar with how that works. But of course, in each study, there are also some adjustments, road calculation edits that take place. Sometimes we have new road sections come on as subdivisions come online and contributed assets come into our network as well. And there's always some minor kilometer differences as well. Probably one of the biggest updates this year is more GIS layers have been added to our system. So we can take a look at various road segments, surface types, road types, things like that. There are some examples there in that road needs section. I recognize that it's fairly small in terms of being able to look at it, but when we pull it up on our GIS network, various roads are colored in different colors to indicate what type of road it is. And then eventually all of our assets will be in our GIS system. We have our water mains, sewer mains in there now, storm sewer. A good example, I think, where GIS really comes into play, not so much on roads, but maybe in the water system. If all of a sudden we had a particular valve that was causing us problems, and we had that data clearly delineated, documented, and on our GIS system, then we could go in there and actually tell the GIS system, show us where this type of valve is. We'd be able to locate it and see what type of an issue we were dealing with. And if they're clustered in a certain area, then it would make it easier for us to tender. So the GIS system down the road is going to really change how we do our work. It's going to make it easier, but of course, like any type of work like that, there's a lot of back end work that goes into keeping it up to date and relevant. But as these new layers are added, we'll hopefully present that to council in various forms, whether it's in our standard information report or whether it's part of our budgeting process. I just did want to point out too that the levels of service have been received for roads, and so the engineer's information has been received, and so we'll be able to incorporate that into our asset management plan as well. A little bit more about roads. As outlined on page 4 of the road section, and I should just mention too, when the final report is together, we'll have headers and footers fully documented with the pages and sections and things like that. So it will be easier for the reader when they want to take a review of the asset management plan. But as outlined on page 4 of the roads section, there's a table there that shows the difference between annual expenditures as recommended in the roads needs study and actual expenditures that we've traditionally made. So those are documents, and that table in particular is something that needs to be discussed at some point and addressed as we move forward. And all of the anomalies that come up when you have a recommended level of service or recommended expenditure versus what the optimum is or what we are incurring right now, those are really just areas to be looked at and discussed and brought up as part of discussions, say at budget time or different things, different points in the year like that. I mentioned, I think, at the last council meeting that we were hoping to have photos attached as part of a qualitative description in those tables. We definitely will have photos on all of the sections, and the engineers will be providing that as well. For instance, just to give council an idea, what does a good road look like? What does a good urban road section look like? What does a good rural road section look like? Just something that's a little bit more visual. Probably the biggest change this year in the roads needs study and how it is impacting the asset management plan is the use of the pavement condition index, or PCI. And it's just a measuring tool, and that is in accordance with the asset management plan. So it's a bit of a change there, but it is more of a quantitative index that's used, but then we include it with the photos just to illustrate the type of work that we would be doing. Included in the section is a brief overview of the work that Rick's crew is completing related to the road surface preservation, and construction. It's important to note that in terms of expenditures and dollar values, this doesn't include related activities like sweeping or ditching or signage or things like that. And I know that's one thing that we'll be doing is once everybody gets their plan in place across Ontario, is taking a look at other similar sized municipalities like ours and seeing how they treat those types of activities. Probably sweeping is the best example, where we do sweeping on an annual basis. It's a key activity for Rick's crew in the spring. And yes, it's important to roads, but it also has a benefit to other asset classes, being stormwater management as well. So if we can get that sand off the roads, then it doesn't get washed into our stormwater system and into our catch basins. So it'll be interesting to see how those annual maintenance expenditures are treated in other plans moving forward. As I mentioned, GIS has been updated and we're improving various layers of data. In the road section that council has right now, I noticed when I was going through, I think we need to add a little bit more explanation about the importance of the roads network to our core, as a core asset to our community, and the goal of our level of service. So I'll be spending just a little bit of time with Rick and the roads needs study team to develop a couple of paragraphs there. Some of that information may be pulled from official plan documents, the transportation network and things like that, just to ensure that it's reflected in terms of the importance that we place on the transportation network in our township. And I guess just a closing comment on this section, and a takeaway maybe for council and the reader down the road. I would say despite less than ideal financial contributions, our road network overall has been rated as good. So we are making progress there. I can spend a little bit more time when we get to our special meeting or on the June 28th meeting talking about the road adequacy. And it seems that in every roads needs study, our adequacy improves, despite the fact that we don't necessarily spend the dollar values that are being recommended by the engineers. There's several factors there, and we can't necessarily rely on that, but our road network overall tends to improve every 5 years and when we do the study. So we're moving in the right direction. A little bit now about the financial section that's included in the report tonight. This just generally provides an overview of our capital investments, reviews our various funding mechanisms that we have in place to provide our current levels of service. There is a general comment there on our lack of debt. We don't have any debt with respect to our core assets. Spent a little time talking about reserves. And of course, with the increased focus on stormwater and structures, and especially as it's impacted by storm events, there is an obvious need for attention to these reserve areas. And so that's something that will be coming up in discussion as we finalize asset management plan and then in future budgets as well. We look at all the funding sources together, and I think council's made good choices with respect to the use of unconditional grants. It's allowed us to maximize some of our project scope, and in particular, we can make use of many sources of funding across all functional areas. And so probably Water Street's one of the best examples there. We're pulling on funding sources across that entire spectrum for a project: water, sewer, stormwater reserves, gas tax funding, unconditional grants, and some development charges as well that will allow us to increase the road width and some of the rideability characteristics there. Looking ahead and considering how We are going to increase asset performance and levels of service. There's a section at the end of the financial section where we're suggesting that we'd consider some new funding alternatives. This would be included as part of the discussion in future asset management updates and future capital asset budgets. And recognizing that all of that needs to take place within a framework of other council approved policies and goals. So just to close out this brief overview, this is where we are with our asset management process in 2022. We have a special meeting that's coming up next week. We'll have all the sections really in that draft. I do expect that we'll probably have some sections that could be open a little bit and maybe requiring a little bit more data and a little bit more discussion, but the report would be available and allow for comment and questions, and then move it forward that much closer to the June 28th acceptance by council. And of course, the updates will continue and they'll be part of not only the 2023 budget process, but there is a requirement that we review the asset management plan on an annual basis. So as we review that annually, we'll also include it in our annual financial planning from now on, basically. So back to you, Mr. Murray. I'd welcome any questions from council.
Thank you very much, Lane. I think Sherry has her hand up.
Thank you. Through you. When you're dealing with the roads, is it just the finished portion of the road, or do you take into account the shoulders as well?
Yeah, when we're looking at the asset management plan and the roads needs study, well, the roads needs study looks at everything. It looks at width, road bed, drainage, conditions along, whether you're in a rural environment, an urban environment, different things like that. So there are two components really, the road bed and all the drainage and everything that keeps that road bed in good shape, and then the surface and the preservation of that surface. So really asset management and the roads need study looks at the entire road.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, if I can ask a follow-up question, will sidewalks, walkways, and trails be considered assets under a different category?
Yeah, as part of our roads needs study, we do have a sidewalk component that's included in that. We're actually, I've had some discussions with Doug Sakosha over the years, because we're actually kind of having a debate about how we capture all of our sidewalks when many of them through the core of our built up areas are on county roads. And so we have a kind of a rudimentary process in place right now where Doug has provided his road sections for the county roads and that numbering set up. And we're trying to incorporate that into our sidewalks. So in terms of how we've actually laid out our core assets at this point in time, sidewalks are not an active part of that. We're starting to build that into our tangible capital assets, which is the audit side of how we do our work. But that's an improvement that we'll make in the future.
Okay, thank you. Donna.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's just Tandy here. If I can interrupt for a moment.
Sure.
I just wanted to make note that Councillor Heron had to leave the meeting and he is not in attendance.
Okay, thank you for letting me know that. Okay, Donna.
Thank you, through you to Lane. As always, Lane, this is an excellent report with a lot of detail. So thanks to you and other staff members who were involved. And I just want to say that I look forward to the pictures that you're going to provide shortly, because I tend to be a visual learner, and that will really help me to see the conditions of the roads. So I think that's going to be a great asset to the asset management plan. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate those comments, and definitely something I've taken away from this over the years and looking at the asset management program as it's rolled out across the province is that this is something that our ratepayers need to be able to look at and understand have appreciation for as well. So to me, I'm the same way. I think those visuals are a real key component of it. So graphs, charts, pictures, GIS maps, things like that, I think it's going to really help the asset management plan be understood and be used.
Thank you. Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with what Donna said. It's an excellent report, and I'm looking forward to the pictures as well. My question is with regards to the county. I think you sort of answered my question, but is the county also required to put together an asset management plan for the county roads and county properties, similar to what you're working on here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, definitely any municipality in the province is required to meet the regulation. The county is actually they went a little bit different route than our process, and they actually have an asset management plan in place already. Theirs includes more than just core assets, and they have some additional financial strategies that they've built in as well. I think that they'll need to bring that back for updates on an annual basis already, because it was approved either last year or the year before. And actually, they have a survey out at this point in time as well that they're reaching out to ratepayers and municipalities to complete as well.
Thank you, Anita. Just before we let you go, Lane, I had a couple of questions for you, or at least observations, and it has to do with the financial part of it. So would it be fair to say that if we were not able to participate in the ISIP program and the OSIP program and the UMP program and the community capacity building program, that used to be the gas tax program, we probably wouldn't be able to maintain the infrastructure that we are responsible for as a municipality. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I would agree that without those, we would have to look at dramatically changing how we fund it. So as a I guess a finance person, I wouldn't say that we can't do it, but we'd have to look at significantly different methods of funding it. Those the ones that you've outlined there are key grant structures that allow us to maintain the roads that we have and the way to the extent that we have. So yeah, without them, it would be a total revamp of how we do our capital asset management.
Exactly. And to me, there's a fundamental imbalance that exists in the system, in the sense that we are responsible for a significant amount of infrastructure without the means to raise the revenue directly as the responsible government. Would that be fair to say?
That would be right on, actually, exactly.
It's something I think the asset management plan process is highlighting. It's been there for quite some time, but it's highlighting that there's that structural imbalance that exists between municipal governments and the senior levels of government. At some point in time, folks will have to address that, because I think the responsibilities for municipalities for infrastructure is only going to grow, not diminish over time. The second point, also to deal with finances, had to do with the various tools that we have, and one of the perennial debates is whether or not you pay for infrastructure by creating reserve and then drawing down your reserve, or whether you borrow the money and pay it back. There's an opportunity cost if you put it in reserve. There's an interest cost if you borrow it. But I think more fundamental than that, if you use reserves, it's the taxpayer of the past that pays for the infrastructure of the future. If you borrow money, it's the infrastructure of today is paid for by the ratepayer of tomorrow. So it really is a decision as to whether you're going to place the burden on people who have who may or may not enjoy the infrastructure, or place the burden on people who will benefit from the creation of that infrastructure. Does that sort of analysis play any part in a decision as to what methods we use for funding?
Yeah, I think it is. That's, I guess, those two things are the fundamental debate, and it's in Eastern Ontario, it hasn't debt hasn't really been looked at favorably, for sure, and so we're no different. I don't think, in a lot of municipalities, and I would say mostly Eastern Ontario. Yeah, that is the debate to be had, and whenever it's the only side of the debt debate that I'd like to just bring in is that it does kind of take away some decision making for council and future councils, because council can determine what they want to set aside for reserves, more or less. Whereas if you've taken on debt, then that requirement's there, and there's really no further decision to be made. You need to pay back that debt. So it does kind of take away some of the decision making for future council.
There are a lot of components to it, and we'll have the discussion about how we finance the asset management plan when we have our special meeting.
Yeah, I guess further to how we are moving forward on the asset management plan versus some of the other more advanced municipalities, or some of the other ones that receive funding to complete their plans. It's not really my intention that we would fully fund our deficit in our assets in this first plan. This would be something that we would bring in over the next few years, and we would have a financial strategy that's required by 2025. So in this one, we think it's more important that we actually identify some of the gaps, have discussions about maybe how we could address some of those gaps down the road. And based on the infrastructure conditions at this point in time, our risk level, we haven't got anything of what I've seen so far that would cause our risk level to say that we need to dramatically change our approach.
So you're not looking for a dedicated levy?
Not as part of the asset management process. Based on what's outlined in the financial section, I'd like to bring that forward at some point later this year, maybe part of the budget process, to take a look at that, recognizing that there are other council approved policies and goals, things like having ideally having the lowest tax rate in the county, making sure that our tax increases are as low as they can be while still maintaining levels of service and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of other factors at play there for sure.
So not necessarily this council, but future councils will have an opportunity to have that debate.
That's correct.
Good. Okay, any other questions? And I think Jerry is still off the line. So and Jerry, you've disappeared from my screen that's my screen's problem, not yours. Let's see here. There you are, you're back. Okay, so does anybody else have any questions? No, I don't. We're not looking for anything to be approved, just received. So Jerry is moving that. Seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Lane. We look forward to your next report at our special meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next staff report is from Robert, and this has to do with conforming to provincial legislation to delegate draft site plan control to staff. Robert, you're up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Fairly short report for me this evening. It's just about the implementation of the Planning Act changes that Bill 109 contained, where the predominant subject is the delegation to staff of the approval authority for site plan control applications applied for after July 1st of this year. So there's a short summary of the changes that are incorporated in there and revised draft bylaw that's included. I don't think I need to go any further over that, but certainly if you had any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Colleagues, questions? Don't see any. I had a question. Would it be possible, without creating an undue burden, if you provided a information report for council on a quarterly basis of the site plans that were approved?
Oh, yeah, we could certainly do that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And, if colleagues, are you okay if we get a quarterly report, just letting us know what was approved? I think everybody's comfortable with that. So we then, okay, with that note, I don't think we have to incorporate it in the motion. I'll look for a mover and seconder for the report. Anita, seconded by somebody? Okay, Sherry. All those in favor? Carried. Anybody want to pull a consent item? Donna?
Seven A2.
7A2. Okay. Anything else? Okay. That's the county report, right, Donna?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see anybody else wanting to pull anything, so why don't we go to 7A2? I don't have the county report in front of me, so go ahead, Donna.
Well, it's just disappointing to me that somebody didn't investigate that north side of the causeway more carefully. And I think county council actually had the same concerns, because I saw Mayor Joe Taylor on the television saying that it's not acceptable to have these types of surprises. I don't imagine there's a thing we can do about it now, but go ahead with the work that has to be done on the north side. But my question to our staff is, we got a grant that was going to cover our portion of the work for the bike and walking trail, and I think street lights and so on. And I'm just hoping that this delay will not affect that grant. And I don't know who has the answer to that.
I'll let Janice answer it. If the grant, the infrastructure grant, is good through 2026, that the work has to be completed by. That's the information we were given last week. I believe that's the case. Janice, did you want to?
Yeah, and the grant that you're referring to, Donna, it was actually an application jointly with the county as the lead and the township as a partner. And both parties received funding to support their components of the project. And yes, for sure, we do have, I believe you're correct, Andy, to 2026 to have the project complete.
Okay, well, that's good news anyway. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Donna. And you're quite correct. That was brought up at county council when the discussion took place. Okay, I'll look for a motion to receive the consent items from Anita, seconded by Donna. All in favor? That's carried. So moving right along, there are no petitions, so council portfolio reports. Donna?
Yes, thank you. The library first. Next week, some of the board members will be meeting at the library to put together the volunteer thank you packages that will be distributed to our volunteers by the end of June. And our next board meeting will be held in the new makerspace, so it will be nice to see everything that's available there. That's all for library. The link, the May stats, Route 31, 283, Route 32, 89, for a total of 372. There's also going to be a link recognition week from Monday, July the 11th to the 15th. And I received an email, and I think Andy did as well, asking Andy to be the MC for that and asking if I could make some comments. And I'm not available that day, so I was just wondering, Andy, if you could make some comments on behalf of our township when it comes time in the program. Would you mind doing that for me?
I will do that, Donna.
Okay, thank you. And the Police Services Board held interviews for the new detachment commander. It wasn't just our Police Services Board, it was actually the warden, the mayor of Havelock, Belmont, Bethune, and the Selwyn Police Services Board chair sat in on the 4-hour process, and those 3 people were given a scoring sheet like the OPP members that were in attendance, and every question that was asked, they were allowed to score how they felt the candidate did on each of their answers. And then that was submitted to the OPP, and they're now in the process of tabulating those score sheets and whatever else. We're not sure if there's other things in the process that they do that do not involve the Police Services Board. So that was done last Wednesday, and we have not heard anything yet. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Donna. Sherry, Economic Development.
Thank you. Floor Coverings International has opened at 470 Robinson Road in Ennismore. They will bring flooring samples to your door with a mobile showroom. So that's something new. And I don't know whether you're going to comment on the Curve Lake elections, Andy.
You go ahead.
Okay. Their elections are June the 20th, and Keith Knott and Phyllis Williams are both running for chief, and they have 13 candidates for 8 positions as councilors there. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Sherry. Anita.
I really don't have a whole lot. It's just nice to see that we're going to have the Jazz Festival in Lakefield on July 9th and the Shamrock Festival in Ennismore on July 10th. So it's nice to see that some of these festivals are starting to come back after 2 years. And other than that, I don't have anything.
Thank you very much, Anita. Just from my perspective, just to follow up on Donna's comments, I was going to comment on the Causeway. So as you've probably seen, the work on Yankee Line is just about complete. That's part of that project, the resurfacing on that. As Donna mentioned, the north side has to have repairs done on it. Those repairs, they're doing the engineering work on that, and they're hopeful of being able to do that work during the winter of, if I understand correctly, 22, 23, the winter 22, 23. That means the resurfacing on the causeway itself will be done in 2023, as will the bridge repairs be done in 2023. That's sort of the current approach to things. Also, staying on the county, the official plan, the next draft of the official plan was published last week. The excess lands portion, which we had raised concerns about, is not part of the of this draft. The intensity target that is going to go up to the province is 15%. The plan makes it clear that the short-term rentals is the responsibility, its regulation is responsibility of the lower tiers. There are changes in the severance policies that are contained in the plan. There's a formalization of the natural heritage and the ag system plans. And we will have an opportunity in our next section here where our staff are going to provide us with an update on the plan. The county has asked each of the lower tiers to speak to the plan. In terms of public health is beginning to turn its attention very much to its recovery, and I suspect will re-engage with the discussion of modernization and how to organize public health going forward in the future. And, from my perspective, hopefully taking lessons learned from the pandemic into account as we move forward and figure out what modernization should look like. And finally, I'd like to take a moment to congratulate our MPP who was successfully re-elected, as well as all the other MPPs who were elected across the province, and quite frankly, to everybody who put their names forward. Running for public office is not an easy thing to do, and so everybody that engaged, congratulations to them. And that is my report. Other new and unfinished business, we have, colleagues will recall, we approved a special meeting for June the 15th. Lane just spoke to that, but there's also a request that I feel we should accommodate. Staff are asking if they could add on to that special meeting to give us an update on the new official plan. And that provides enough time then to provide some input to the county before they submit it, if we do it as part of the special meeting. Is everybody comfortable with doing that? Okay, so I need a formal motion because of it. So Anita and Donna, all those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, that takes us to the bylaws. And we have the bylaw to designate the site plan control area. That's the one that that Robert spoke to. Moved by Anita, seconded by Donna. All those in favor, carried. We need a confirming bylaw from Sherry, seconded by Donna. All those in favor, carried. And we need an adjournment from Anita, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Thank you, colleagues. Well, we're back next week on the 15th. Thank you, staff. Very much appreciated. And everybody stay safe.